guys, House of the Dragon is back, and I'm filming this before we've seen anything in season 3, but I am so excited, so scared, and completely unprepared, right? All the emotions. Now, before we get into it, let me be clear about what this is and what it isn't. This is a leadership case study, okay? I'm not here to debate the show or rank the characters or tell you who to root for. I'm here because Daemon and Aemond Targaryen have handed us one of the most precise illustrations of second-in-command leadership, and I think it's worth taking apart. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the most capable person in a situation, but not the one in charge? Where you could see the full picture, right? You knew exactly what needed to happen, and you were doing most of the heavy lifting, but someone else held the title? A lot of people would call that frustrating, and sometimes it is, but there is another way to look at it. Being a great number 2 is its own specific, rare, and really powerful skill set. And if you're new here, I'm Jen. I've spent over 20 years in leadership development, training teams, managing people, and studying what actually separates leaders who build something lasting from leaders who just burn it all down. Pun intended. What I've learned is that the most interesting leadership lessons don't always come from the person at the top, right? Sometimes the clearest window into how power actually works is the person standing just behind them or just beside them. I spent most of my career as a better number 2 than a number 1, and it took me a long time to stop treating that as a character flaw. And so today's case study is going to change how you think about that role. Hopefully. So we've got Daemon Targaryen, we've got Aemond Targaryen, right? 2 second-in-commands and 2 completely different relationships to that role, to the person above them, and to their own power. So here is the thesis. The quality of a number 2 often reflects the quality of the number 1. Now, Daemon is a number 2 who eventually chose his role, right? He's loyal, dangerous, sometimes chaotic, but grounded in a genuine commitment to Rhaenyra and what she is building. And his power amplifies her, right? He makes her more formidable by existing in her orbit. And Aemond is a number 2 who has no worthy number 1 to follow, right? Because Aegon is a vacuum. So Aemond fills it with ambition that has nowhere healthy to go, skills that have no real container, and a kind of cold, calculated hunger that becomes destructive because there's no real leadership above him to direct it. It's the same position, but completely different outcomes. And the difference has almost nothing to do with their individual talent, right? It has everything to do with who they're serving and why. Now, let me be honest about something, because I think it actually makes this case study more useful, not less. Daemon did not start the story as this gracious, self-aware number 2 who had made peace with his role, right? He only just became that in the last episode that we saw. He started it as someone who deeply resented it. And this is the man who called Rhaenyra's baby brother the heir for a day, right? It was cruel, it was petty, and deliberately designed to wound. And this is the man who went to Harrenhal originally to raise an army for himself rather than in support of Rhaenyra, right? Who demanded to be called king, not king consort.
You should address me as my king.
But you're the prince.
What would you call the husband of the queen?
Well, the king.
There it is then.
Consort.
That last bit seems unnecessary, don't you think?
Who was building his own play for the throne out of resentment and wounded pride. Daemon, in those early seasons, is not a loyal number 2, right? He's a furious, ambitious man who feels overlooked and is doing something about it. And then something shifts. At Harrenhal, Daemon has a vision, right? A reckoning, really. And he sees what we now know as the Song of Ice and Fire. And he bends the knee, not because he was forced to or because he ran out of options, but just because he saw something clearly, possibly for the first time, about what he actually wants, who he actually is, and what his role is in just the overall scheme of things. The crown he was chasing was never really the point, right? the person he is most powerful beside is Rhaenyra. And once he sees that, he stops fighting it. And that's the part that nobody talks about when they romanticize the number 2 role, right? For a lot of people, arriving there is not a graceful, self-aware decision made early in their career. It's something that they figure out after they've already tried to be the number 1 and it didn't go the way that they had planned, right? After the resentment, after the power grab, after the moment of reckoning that finally shows them where they actually belong. And in real workplaces, this shows up as the person who tried management, hated it, and then finally gave themselves permission to go back to doing the thing that they were actually great at, right? The senior individual contributor who stopped apologizing for not wanting to climb. I think that's where many millennials are right now. The operator who realized that their superpower was making someone else's vision real and not generating the vision themselves. Society's trained us to see that as a lack of ambition, but it is not. And Daemon, of all people, is the proof of that. The most dangerous man in the realm chose to be a number 2 because he finally understood himself well enough to know it was where his power actually landed. And here's what makes Daemon extraordinary as a number 2, right? He doesn't disappear into the role. He challenges Rhaenyra. He pushes back. He has his own opinions and he voices them. His loyalty is not submission. It is chosen, it is active, and sometimes uncomfortable. But when she makes the call, he executes. And even when he disagrees, right? Even when it costs him. Now, think about the best second in command that you've ever worked with or worked for, right? They probably weren't a yes person. They pushed back in private, they asked the hard questions, and then they got in line and made it work. And that combination, right, independent thinking plus disciplined execution is truly rare. And it is worth recognizing when you see it. Now, Aemond is, by almost any objective measure, more strategically capable than Aegon, right? He's disciplined, he's calculated, he thinks in long arcs, right? But Aegon is not a real number 1. He's just a figurehead, right? He's reactive, impulsive, and completely incapable of holding the vision that Aemond's gifts could serve. So, what does Aemond do? He fills the vacuum. He starts making calls that aren't his to make. He stops operating as a second and starts operating as a shadow leader. And because there is no real authority above him, there's no check on where that goes. And we see in season 2, episode 4, it arrives at its most extreme conclusion when Aemond tries to kill his own brother at Rook's Rest. The number 2 attempts to remove the number 1 entirely, not because Aegon wronged him, right? Because Aegon is simply in the way. Because the vacuum has gotten so complete that Aemond has stopped seeing Aegon as a king he serves and started seeing him as an obstacle to what Aemond believes he could do with the power himself. And that's what happens when a highly capable second has no real leadership above them for long enough, right? The line between serving the throne and wanting the throne just disappears. When the number 1 is absent, the number 2 doesn't automatically become the leader. They become something more dangerous. And this is one of the most recognizable dynamics in dysfunctional organizations, right? The senior leader who's checked out, absent, or just simply not up to the role, right? Maybe the highly capable second who starts making decisions by default. The slow erosion of accountability as lines of authority blur, right? So it's not entirely Aemond's fault. He's just operating in a system that created this problem. But the outcome is still destructive. Daemon's power serves something beyond himself, right? His loyalty to Rhaenyra, to his family, to the vision of what she is building gives his considerable gifts a direction. Aemond's power, by the end of the war, is mostly serving itself, right? The ruthlessness that might have been a strategic asset under real leadership becomes an end in itself. He stops being a weapon for someone else's war and becomes his own war entirely. And so in people terms, this is the talented, driven individual who was never given a real leader to learn from, right? A real vision to work toward or a real structure to operate inside of. Their gifts don't disappear, they just turn inward or sideways or destructive. And the organization often created that condition long before the person acted on it. The Dance of Dragons is full of casualties, but some of the most significant ones trace directly back to what happens when the number 2 role is either functioning well or breaking down. And so when Daemon is operating as a grounded, loyal, capable second, the blacks hold. When Aemond is operating without real leadership above him, the decisions that he makes unilaterally become some of the most devastating of the entire war. The number 2 can make or break what the number 1 is trying to build. And so in real workplaces, this is the director whose work ethic and capability either holds a dysfunctional team together or quietly undermines everything depending on their relationship to leadership above them. And the number 2 is never as neutral as the org chart makes them look. So what do Daemon and Aemond teach us about the number 2 role? Number 1, choosing to be a great number 2 is a legitimate ambition, so stop treating it like a consolation prize. The people who are genuinely built for that role, right, who have the skills, the temperament, the strategic thinking, and the ability to execute under someone else's vision are very, very rare. And rare is very, very valuable. 2, who you choose to serve shapes what your gifts become. So Daemon's loyalty is to someone worth being loyal to, right? That choice transforms what he's capable of. And if you're going to be a number 2, make sure you are choosing a number 1 who deserves it. And 3, loyalty is not silence. The best number 2s challenge upward in private and then execute publicly. If you're suppressing your perspective entirely just to keep the peace, you are not being loyal, you are being absent. Number 4, if you are a number 1, the capability of your number 2 is partly your responsibility. So if your most talented person is going sideways, right, ask what system it was that you built or failed to build that contributed to that. And 5, power without direction becomes its own problem. So whether you are a number 1 or a number 2, if you are operating without a clear North Star, a clear vision, clear reason for what you are doing and who you are doing it for, your gifts will not save you. They will just make the damage more impressive. So I want to leave you with this. Think about a time when you were the most capable person in a situation, but not the one holding the title, right? Maybe you're in that situation right now. Was the person above you a Rhaenyra? Someone worth following, worth fighting for, and worth doing your best work in service of? Or were they an Aegon? A vacuum that you were quietly filling, maybe without even realizing what that was costing you. Both situations are real and happen all the time. And knowing the difference, right? Being honest with yourself about which one you are living might be the most important leadership insight that you can have right now. Being a great number 2 is its own kind of power, but only if you're standing behind the right number 1. So, if this one landed, hit like and subscribe and drop in the comments. Have you ever been a Daemon in the wrong situation or an Aemond? I think more people have lived that than we talk about, and I'll see you in the next one.